Welcome back to the Gardening with Joy and Holly radio show. Happy to have you along. Want to find out more information about those sponsors you've heard and the coupon code availability, you can go to our parent website, the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com, clicking on the Money tab at the top of the page for the coupon codes and the Season 10 tab for past shows and all sponsored listings. Well, before we go to the hotline, Holly, we got to talk about ScrubbySoap.com.
If you're anything like me, you are a hands-on person, but that comes at a cost, and you're hands-on and your hands are dirty and not necessarily something that just regular soap can take care of. So Scrubby is a natural soap with a scrubber inside that fills the entire size of the bar. Rather than using harsh synthetic cleaning agents, they use citrus oil in their soap, so it removes dirt, grease, oil, paint, and more. Good for artists and painters, gardeners, mechanics, fishing,
kids,
all sorts of stuff. Yeah, kids. Easily removes paint, grease, oil, and grime. If you go to ScrubbySoap.com and use code SOAP, you can get 10% off your order.
Holly, let's go to the hotline and bring in our guest for this week.
Joe Lample is not only an experienced gardener, but an author, blogger, podcaster, and was host of the well-known PBS show Growing a Greener World. He now has a Garden Academy and podcast to keep the love and education for all things green alive.
Welcome to the program, Joe Lample.
Thank you, Joey and Holly. It's always good to revisit with you all and talk some gardening.
Absolutely. I want to start with this. You've hosted Growing a Greener World for 12 seasons. With all of your journeys across the country, talking to gardeners, what is something that experience taught you about yourself?
It taught me, I guess it set some great examples for me from all the amazing people I got to visit with that are gardening across the country and actually beyond. But it gave me a behind the scenes view of, how people do what they do. And beyond that, more about the people that they are. And every time that happened, it was a reminder for me and an aha of how good people are as gardeners, and then, individual little things that they would do that were unique or new to me, I would bring those home and apply them with what I could. I don't know that there was a common denominator across the board because every trip over 12 years was different, but I'm telling you, gardeners are the best people, and having the chance to spend time and break bread with them in addition to hanging out with them in their gardens just was a good reminder of just the unique qualities that we have as gardeners and why more people need to be doing it, because it's contagiously good.
And I'm going to guess that every time that they shared a thought or a procedure that they did in the garden, in your mind you went, "That's why I'm making this show."
It's exactly right. Good insight, because we would be documenting much of our time together with all of these people. And of course, the show was only 30 minutes long and we would typically be there for 3 days, but we would get the best of what we could and bring that into every episode so that everybody else could benefit from our being there to document that.
Right.
All right. So we get this question a lot ourselves, and we know you are quite an expert. How do you get enough compost for your raised beds? And how do you keep your soil productive and fed in those raised beds year after year?
That's a good question, but I can't produce as much compost as I would like to have for all of the beds that I want to provide compost to here. Even though I've got, a good amount of land, I need more than I'm able to take in from the debris or the cutback or the various ways that I get, even the poultry manure from our barn for the chickens, and the bedding, that's just, I have 9 large compost, pallet bins of compost, but beyond that, what really makes the difference for me is hooking up with a coffee shop, a brewer in town. They have a couple locations. And so every time they brew some more coffee, I get their chaff from the roasted beans, and I get the coffee grounds, and I make a Sunday afternoon trip over there every week, and I bring back several 5-gallon buckets of coffee grounds and a small plastic garbage bin of the chaff. from the beans. And so that really adds up every 4 weeks. I've got a month's worth of good stuff. And that's really what puts me over the top to be able to have enough. Is that helps a lot.
Now, when people watch your Facebook post or your YouTube channel and they see this, what appears to, and it is a very nice and well-mannered garden, and people think, well, I don't have the time to do that. How many hours would you say that you intensely work in the garden in order to get that pristine and I guess camera-worthy, if you want to use that term?
Yeah, well, it's probably a valid term, because really that influences a lot on the extra time I put into the garden. You know, I love walking out into a tidy garden that doesn't stress me out, because I see all the weeds and all the, potential threats that are out there. And yet that's just gardening, so even TV gardens have that, but if the camera doesn't point in that direction, you don't see it, even though it may be there. But I would say, to answer your question, I try to allocate 90 minutes a day, first thing in the morning during the growing season, because that's, it's typically pretty hot once the sun gets over the horizon and overhead. And so I try to get my work done. And for me, it's really personal growth and mental health too, because even though I may be out there pulling weeds or checking things out, I love that activity. And it's very zen, it's quiet, the birds are singing, and it's very productive too, because I kind of know what I'm going to do before I get out there. So I kind of put the blinders on, even though, we go down those rabbit trails all the time when we see something else. But if I can avoid that, I put my earbuds in, I'm listening to podcasts and along with the birds, and I'm doing my work, and I have my timer on my watch go off, or my phone. So when 90 minutes is up, even though there may be more that I want to do or need to do, I cut it off right there so I can get to work inside with my day job of, all I do, the company. But that's it. Probably about 90 minutes a day, 7 days a week, or maybe not 7, but to me it's pleasure. I don't look at it as work. So I would be happy putting that much time 7 days a week into the garden. And I usually do.
It's amazing how your mental ability changes when you're digging in the dirt and you are away from that screen.
It's everything. It is so everything. And I wish more people would give outdoor activity a chance and then put their phone down during that time, because it really is life-changing to me and refreshing, and it gets you re-centered for the state of mind that we really should be in, because I don't care what side of the political spectrum you're on or whatever your beliefs are. Just, when we're all out in nature doing our own thing, it's very grounding. And I think we all need more of that right now. So yes, Joey, you're right about that.
Absolutely. What is a major plant disease that you have dealt with, or how do you get rid of it or control it that you've just fought with it for years?
Yeah, there's a lot of airborne early blight is a common one. That's coming in, like with my tomatoes every year. It blows in, and septoria leaf spot, that's another one. Those are fungal diseases, and they're not fatal. You can to what I do with that, when I see it, I just cut it out. I usually cut it. I follow whatever the leaves are back to the stem, which goes back to the main stem, and I'll cut it there and just take it out and remove it so that it doesn't continue to spread. But even if I didn't do that, Joey, those spores are blowing through the air. They're windborne pathogens that find their way onto the plant, and then they infect the plant. And you learn to live with it. Really, if you're trying to have a disease-free vegetable garden, especially if you're growing tomatoes, good luck with that, because I don't think it's very realistic. At least if you're not using chemicals, and if you promote garden health through soil and being proactive and managing anything you see as you see it, that goes a long way to helping you get the harvest that you're looking for. You may not have pristine plants, but you're going to have a productive garden. And then the other thing is I have soil-borne diseases too, like Fusarium wilt, and that's one that, is in the soil. And that finds its way in other ways. Like sometimes you bring it in when you're buying soil, or you're bringing in outside soil, or maybe plants that have been propagated somewhere else. It may be in that soil, but however it finds its way in, that's more challenging to deal with. But not the simplest thing, but the most effective thing, because there really isn't a insecticide or disease control that you can put into the soil that's going to manage soil-borne diseases at a consumer level. So I rotate. I try to, and I'm doing better every year. Try to rotate my crops so that it is 4 years before that garden bed sees that same crop back in it. So the 3 years after it's in that bed, I'll plant my tomatoes in another part of the garden, and then next year another part of the garden, and the next year another part of the garden, and then back to the original spot. And in the meantime, I'm starving out those pathogens so they aren't being given what they want. Like if they love, tomato roots and whatever the exudates are coming out of tomatoes in the root system, I'm denying them that opportunity. And if you do that for long enough, you can basically starve them out, and they just don't persist without their primary sources of sustenance.
Those are some very helpful tips. What has been a garden trick or technique that someone taught you that you thought was just an absolute game changer?
Man, wow. There's a lot of things. The one that just came to mind as you were asking that question, and it's because I've visited it lately when, I do a lot of seed starting, and I've been doing more soil blocking than ever. And I've always loved that concept of using soil blocks versus plastic cell trays for a couple reasons: to eliminate the plastic, and for the scale that I'm growing, I like the idea of reducing transplant shock, and soil blocks really speak to both of those things. But I've never really had the time to make as many blocks as I need to the scale that, I'm growing 4,000 seedlings a year. And that's a lot of blocks. But I've found a system that allows me to make 72 at a time. But Elliot Coleman, the guru of soil blocking and market farming, who's a treasure to gardeners and farmers worldwide. When we were doing Growing a Greener World and I had a chance to visit him and his farm, I hung out with him in his greenhouse one morning as he was blocking up tomato seedlings from 3/4 inch soil blocks into 2-inch square blocks. And it was fascinating, but to watch him do it, because he's my mentor for a lot of things related to gardening, but especially with soil blocking. And just to kind of watch him do what he does and see his processes is something I've never let go of. And fortunately we filmed it, so I have it to refer back to if I need to, but I've locked that into my brain, and I channel Elliot Coleman all the time with soil blocks, and it really makes a difference. And I give him all the credit for that. So I would say that's one that's very relevant to the timing of this conversation, that is front of mind for me. And I have him to thank for that.
Absolutely. Now, you have a very, very thorough book, the Vegetable Gardening Book, Your Complete Guide to Growing an Edible Organic Garden from Seed to Harvest. What is something in that book that would encourage our listeners to pick up a copy?
I think the tone of the book, I wrote in a way that's very conversational, but very applicable. So you could pick up that book. If you're brand new to wanting to start a vegetable garden, this book really walks you through the process and takes away the intimidation factor, because I think a lot of would-be gardeners never get started because they feel like they either don't know enough, or they don't know where to begin, or they just think that it might be more than they want to take on. And I try to break and debunk those myths right off the top, and giving them tangible, applicable steps and information. And the other thing this book does, and it's just my ethos and how I teach and instruct, is I want people to not only understand the steps, which we all know is the how-to, like if we're doing a recipe card to make dinner and we pull out a recipe, we're getting the how-to steps. But what I feel is most important to that, if you really want to take this to the next level, is to understand the why-do behind every how-to. Because even though you're told what step to take next, well, why do you need to take that step? Why do you need to let the yeast rest for a period of time? I don't even know. I'm not really a cook, but there's reasons why we do what we do in the kitchen, and there's reasons why we do what we do with gardening too, that makes the garden better, stronger, more healthier, and more productive. But if we don't know why we're doing those steps, it doesn't stick with us so that we can apply that information for the next challenge that we have and the next challenge after that. But when we get our head around a little bit of the science of it, like, oh, that's why I'm doing that, then you can really feel way more confident when you get out there, and you can feel empowered, and you start to feel like, more of it's in your control than you think, even though you're never in ultimate control, because Mother Nature always has the final say. You understanding the why-do behind the how-to, I think, is essential to really being what I call a better, smarter, more confident gardener.
Well, we really appreciate having you on the program today. How can people find out more about you and all of your great information?
I think the one-stop place for that is joegardener.com, the website, because from there there's links and areas where you can go to probably everything else. And so I would start people right there. And if they're on social media, on Instagram, I'm at Joe Gardener, and I would love to meet your listeners there and have conversations and see where it goes.
Can your books be found at your website as well?
It actually is not. We don't have an online store for my website, but major booksellers and Amazon, of course, you can get it there. So it's easy to find.
Well, Joe, we greatly appreciate the time you've etched out for us and our listeners. We greatly appreciate that, and thank you so much.
My pleasure, y'all. Have a good gardening season.
Absolutely. And when we return, it's your garden questions and our garden answers. You're tuned in to the Gardening with Joy and Holly radio show.